Hi, everybody. Kate Hailey here with Glazer's Camera in Seattle, Washington. Happy Sunday. I hope everyone is having a great weekend. This weekend, we've been having our Photofest event, which for many of you, you know this is our big annual sale that we celebrate in the summer. Just kind of the biggest sale of the year. So there's lots of discounts and opportunity to save a little bit of money or more, depending on what you're looking for. And today's the last day of that sale. So if you're interested in picking up gear at a little bit of a discount, or maybe more, depending on what the thing is, check out our website for the promotions or come in and say hi and pick up some stuff. But we also hope that today you're going to hang out with us for the next hour because we have an awesome photographer named Phil Penman, who is a Leica photographer. And we also have Rob on from Leica. We're going to have like a little interview and discussion around some of Phil's work. Before we dive into that, I just, as always, want to remind everybody, if you have questions during this conversation, please let us know by posting those in the chat in YouTube or the comments on Facebook. I'll be pulling some questions from there, but since this is a little bit more of an interview style, I already have some questions prepared to chat with Phil and Rob about. But yeah, so this is going to be a lot of fun. We're super excited. You may or may not know we have a Leica boutique here in our store. So we can definitely be a go-to resource for Leica gear, new and used, if you're in the market. So I'd love to introduce Phil and Rob before we get started, and then we'll kind of dive into the conversation. So Rob works with Leica. And Rob, can you just tell us a little bit about your role with Leica?
Yes, so thank you for that introduction, Kate. I'm a channel manager for Leica, covering the Leica stores and the boutiques currently throughout the country. Previously on the East Coast, but with the retirement of Ebby Kuna, I've taken over responsibilities for East and West Coast. I hope to be out there and visiting Seattle quite soon.
That would be really lovely. It would be great to meet you in person. And Ibby was with Leica for like a really long time, like 50 years or something, I think.
Yeah, I think it was, he started in 1965 as an
Wow,
apprentice. So yeah, 56 years.
long
And
time.
he and I are still friends. I call him in Germany periodically. I think
Oh,
he's
are
still
they
waiting
back over
for his
there?
furniture to arrive. Yes, he moved to
Okay,
Germany to be
okay.
close to family.
That makes sense. That makes sense. So,
Yeah.
okay, awesome. And so, like I said, if you have questions during this session, please let us know. I'd love to introduce Phil. And like I said, this is a little bit interview style, so it's a little bit different than some of the other presentations we've done this weekend. Between the three of us, we're running a slideshow. We've got some questions, and we want to hear from you guys tuning in as well. So let me introduce Phil Penman. Phil, how are you doing, sir?
I'm very good, Kate. Thanks for having me on the show, and glad that the Photofest has been going really well. And yeah, no, happy to be here.
Well, like I said earlier before we went on air, we're very excited to have you here as well. It's been a while since we've collaborated with Leica on any kind of an event, so that's like one thing that's really awesome. And as I mentioned, we have the boutique here in Seattle, and so there's an opportunity for folks to kind of browse Leica gear. There's some historical pieces, used gear, and all that good stuff. Um, so let's get to know you a little bit, Phil, and then we'll dive into the work. Can you tell us a little bit about how you got your start in photography in general?
Yeah, of course. So I started when I was about 15. My dad was a photographer, and just fell in love with it. I was in the dark room, up all night printing. Finally got like into the profession. I started working for like a local newspaper after doing about 5 years study, and then went on to corporate photography. I used to shoot all the corporate directors for Microsoft and like marketing campaigns, advertising stuff in England. And then my overall goal was I wanted to be in the US. I came here in '94 as a kid and fell in love with New York City, and kind of spent the next 6 years just trying to figure out how I was going to get back here. And believe it or not, I was on like a stakeout. Some Swedish news presenter was tied up in some news story, and I was in this car with this guy. And we got talking, and he said, well, if your goal is to go to the US, then you should try my friends Kevin and Gary in Los Angeles, who run a news agency called Splash News. And I called them up. One of them came over to the UK, interviewed me, and then basically about 2-3 weeks later, I found myself in Los Angeles working, doing pretty much everything: investigative news, celebrity, going. They promised me this stuff that I would be all over the world, going Hawaii and the Caribbean, doing all these jobs. And at the time you kind of think it's all BS, and then you get here and it's like you're right in the middle of it. Next thing I know, I'm getting flown off to Argentina to do model shoots. So it was kind of a cool experience getting there.
That's amazing. So what transitioned you to New York City then?
I hated LA, to be perfectly honest. I couldn't stand it. Not that I ever really saw my apartment. The apartment that I had was like 2 of us sharing a 1-bedroom. It was the most shootings per square mile in Los Angeles. There was a different burnt out car on our back street every day. So I wasn't that worried about getting sent out of town on jobs, but I had a suitcase packed the whole time. And I was never really falling into it. Like the way they work over there is very different. It was almost like the people that you were working with, like your own team from the same agency, they were more competitive than the competition. So I found it very hard to get used to that. So when my boss was kind of like, I'm not sure if LA's working out for you too, Moel, and we need to set up an office in New York. Would you be interested? I was like, yep, sign me up.
I'm in.
They gave me I remember they gave me a $500 gift card to go and spend at Ross Dress for Less to buy some winter clothing. And I was on a flight to New York, and then I didn't get to see my apartment for a long time. There was 2 of us based here, and we were covering pretty much all of Canada, most of the USA, and then the Caribbean and most of South America as well. It was a trip. I did it for about 5 years before I just burnt out.
And is that what kind of transitioned you into the work that you're creating now? I mean, I know you still take some commercial clients, but the body of work we're going to look at today is pretty different than that. Yeah,
it's not like Callista Flockhart walking down with some groceries, really. But it's a tough, a working photographer's job is not easy. Like we know that. I've done everything from weddings, bar mitzvahs, fashion shoots, commercial advertising, and what I've found, when I started in photography, it's not because I said, hey, I want to go and shoot pictures of celebrities. It was, I love black and white photography. I love being in the darkroom, and I just want to, passionate about your photography. And then you start getting caught up in the work side of things, and eventually it slowly starts to beat you down a little bit. So, I quit the agency thing in 2005 because, you couldn't hold a girlfriend. You had no life, and most of us were alcoholics, to be honest. That was the only way you could get through the job. And then, I had the power to be able to take the jobs that I wanted to do. But then you get caught up in this trap of the money. The money in celebrity was really good back in the early mid 2000s. Yeah. And I got caught up in that. And then I just, I had a break. My transition was a friend of mine had a Leica M7 that he bought, and he wasn't using it. So he sold it to me. And then I got addicted really quickly. And I think I must have bought 5 different Leica film cameras and seven lenses, and sold all my pets and everything I owned. Just became an addict. And and then, it was weird. I used to go around looking for celebs, and I'd have this big bag that I had custom made that it could fit I had 2 camera systems. I had one with my 200 to 400 Canon set up, and then I had the M9 with a 35 fixed lens on it. And it was the mental separation between, this is work and that's for me. So I would just ride around the city looking for all these shots for me in the end.
Okay. Well, that's awesome. Let's pull up your slideshow so we can kind of take a couple of peek at some of the commercial stuff that you've done. And let's get that queued up. So here's this, and I think we're going to look at this photo again on the left. This is one of my favorite shots that I've seen in this slideshow that Phil has here. But let's go to the next two slides. Do you want to talk just a little bit about these, and then we'll transition into that passionate personal work that you've been doing for a while?
Yeah, this was kind of combining two passions. To get off the alcohol, I went heavy into cycling, and that was my kind of get out. So I had this cool assignment where I was photographing Team Sky, which is probably the biggest cycling team in the world. They win the Tour de France every year. And this was at a training camp in Mallorca, which is normally just really sunny. And we were driving along, and all of a sudden, like we're the car in front, and this freak snowstorm comes out of nowhere. So I'm just like leaning my body out of the car because we don't have the trunk up. So I'm leaning out the side window trying to take pictures. I've got like my 24-90 on and my SL, and the guy who's driving the car, he's also driving the car, but he's got his iPhone and he's got his head turned around and he's trying to take pictures. And I'm just looking at like cliff rocks coming at my head, and I'm like, duck in, get out, shoot a couple more, duck in. I'm like, do you mind just watching the road for 10 seconds, so I don't have my head taken off. But it was a cool assignment, and I got really lucky with these, and these ended up going like front pages of most of the cycling trade mags around the world. And it was it was a good experience. And I was very fortunate enough to be on that particular assignment with these guys, because it's pretty rare that you get this kind of access.
Right.
So that was, sorry.
No. Yeah, so I'm thinking ahead a little bit to some of the work that we're about to look at. And you talked about this a little bit. How much commercial work are you doing right now? And how much time do you think you spend on the personal projects and the work that we're about to dive into?
It's bizarre. The last year actually was my biggest year. It sounds kind of strange to say that, but found myself doing a lot more commercial gigs this year, just gone. The thing is though, when you get one of these jobs, like, I was doing like 2 or 3 pharmaceutical shoots this last year, but the nice thing was when they're hiring you for your style. So it's not like you're having to completely change how you're working. So, I did a bit of that, but like you'll get an assignment and it's basically like a month of your life will just go, you don't see or breathe for a month. And then maybe, the next 8 months, you're free to work on what you want to work on. So I was doing a lot of pandemic stuff. I realized that every single picture, every single day is going to be historical. This is something that I learned from when I covered 9/11. I didn't shoot enough back then. I didn't realize the significance of a lot of things that I was shooting. So now I shoot everything. Every day I go out with my camera. I always have a camera on me, and I'm always looking for pictures.
Well, let's dive into and I feel like when we talked about this was part of this shot is kind of representing some of that transition. Am I correct in that? When we talked about this the other day.
This was actually in Mallorca. This was during that trip, and this is kind of like what the cyclists, their perspective of what they were looking at as they're riding. But it became, this work that you're going to see is kind of escapism for me. It's strange. You'll see a lot of the work is, it's very lonely. And I'm not sure if that's like my personal coming out or whatever, but New York's, it's a pretty crazy place. So I always find myself going out like in the dead of night or really, really early in the morning, because I always wanted to escape the people. And I wanted to try and capture pictures of New York where it was just like eerie silence. And then, of course, the last year and a half, everyone kind of just left. And you know, that it just made, from a picture point of view, all of a sudden, you know, those years before where I was trying to capture these moments of silence, now it was every day was like that. You know, I
But
would
also
go out.
like at different times of the day, because you talked about kind of getting up early and going out to do this. Did that shift a lot last year, especially? Like you
No,
could go
I'd
out at
still,
noon and have a similar experience, or
no, because a lot of it's by light and weather. So,
okay,
you know, if I know that a snowstorm's coming in, I'll lay all my gear out the night before. You know, I put all my Gore-Tex stuff ready to go. And you know, it's weird. I'm like a freak lying in bed, and I'm literally looking out the window, waiting for that first snowdrop. And as soon as I see it start snowing, I get up and go. And it doesn't matter if it's like 2 o'clock in the morning or 3 o'clock in the morning. I'm heading out the door because I know that the best pictures are when, like, in the midst of the storm. It's
hmm,
not, you know, those moments during the day when the traffic's already taken out a lot of the snow. It's the pictures, you get like that added texture in the air when the snow's coming down. So I kind of learned this after a couple of times going out, that was the way to do it. So now it's all about preparation, making sure I'm in the right place at the right time. You know, if I know that there's a snowstorm coming during the day, I make sure I'm in a particular spot 2 hours before it happens. You know, I don't want to be caught lagging.
right,
So, you know, this is kind of my escape from everything else. You know, I get up, I buy my street coffee, and I just roam the city looking for these kind of pictures. You can kind of lose yourself in it, which is one of the things that I love about photography, and the way that I have my camera set up as well. I have like some rangefinder cameras that I use, and I have what they call a VisiFlex. It's an electronic viewfinder that goes on top of the camera, and you can set that to black and white. So when I'm looking at these pictures you're seeing, I'm actually seeing them in black and white as I'm shooting it.
right.
So it's like you're being taken away from reality, and you're getting lost in like this timelessness that is New York. The you know the snow and everything kind of allows us to strip away everything that kind of dates something, and you know there's nothing better for me, especially like if you're a New York romantic. It's, you know, can't beat it.
I think I was there. Well, I go to New York ideally every year, but I didn't get to do that last year. But I was there a few years ago, and it was like crazy snowstorms in March. And I was like, well, I don't really have the right shoes for this, but I'm still going to go out in it and take photos, you know,
Yeah.
because I'm normally there in the fall, so I don't get to see that snowstorm. And it does change the look and the story and the light. Would you agree?
Oh yeah, it's weird. Like I miss it already. It's when I lived in England, the weather was shit all the time, and you just, you know, you hated it. But now that I've kind of like evolved as a photographer, now you kind of realize that it's that bad weather that can actually give you some of the greatest pictures. So now I'm like waiting for it to be really bad weather.
Right.
And, you know, I want really big storms. Like the best pictures I get are the ones where it's like full on blizzard, and you're walking and you're using the camera as kind of like a shield from the snow, and you're shooting as you're walking. And that's kind of when I know that I'm going to be getting good pictures. Like I said, like, you know, this particular image that you're looking at, this was shot during the kind of middle of the pandemic in April. And again, I'm using the weather to kind of give that backdrop. I always just, I never let the weather dictate, but I use it as my background, and then I'll slowly add elements to the picture from there. So for this, you know, I know that I can lose a lot of the, it's kind of weird. It's almost like I don't want the picture to look too perfect. It's like the vignetting and the, I guess it's like the texture in the air that gives the picture its look. Like you don't want it looking too clear. You want it looking mysterious, because that's how it feels like when you're actually there.
Well, and you have these layers. The front part of the image, it has a sharper contrast. The street is wet. You have those figures in silhouette. And as you move through it, you see that weather really, the fogginess, the moodiness. So there's layers of mood and texture that really kind of draw you in and pull you in and get you moving around, which is just really lovely. I want to talk about this next shot. So this is one of my favorites. It's on the opening presentation slide. And I am a ridiculous fan in the best of ways of reflections. So I love the reflected moment here. I would love to know, for me, when I think about a shot like this is about the timing. Do you see a scene like this and wait for that moment to unfold? How many times do you feel like you get lucky? How much time do you feel like you invest into an image like this?
I think it depends on how much time you're having and how much fun you're having. Like if I'm having fun shooting, I'm just going to carry on shooting. There's a lot to be said for just actually enjoying taking the pictures. So, you know, sometimes I might come home with 300 images of the same scenario, but I had so much fun doing it that I didn't really care. You know, I can delete it later. A shot like this, believe it or not, I was the building on the left was, I think it's the Trump Hotel in Soho, and I was on a stakeout and I kind of got bored. And then, you know, I saw the rain started coming down. I started working on this particular image. I'll shoot a couple of images, something like this. You're always kind of looking at what's coming into the frame, and you're looking for like the right shape of person, or, you know, whether they're with an umbrella, maybe it's a woman with like big high heels on that has a really good shape to the picture. And then maybe I'll shoot a couple of different frames. Like this particular image, I probably shot 2 or 3 shots with this. You know, it's not like I'm shooting 14 frames a second and just letting rip. But you don't, you know, you have to get that separation between the person and that steam pipe on the left. So, you know, there's no harm in shooting 2 or 3 frames and following the movement, because you don't know till later which is going to be the better shot anyway.
Right. Absolutely. And I think, again, I just love the timing of that person walking through that puddle and their reflection. It's just, I always get into those kinds of scenes and the silhouette and the contrast and all of that. Let's keep going through the other images, because there's so much good stuff to look at.
Yeah, this is out in Times Square, just like capturing people. And then, you know, I always feel like I'm taking advantage. You know, you're capturing people at their weakest. And then like the American flag one that you saw next, that's shot with like a longer lens. That was pretty early in the morning, that was. And again, it's like I use longer lenses. I used to use a 90 to 280, and I have a 105 to 280, like an old R lens that I use. It has like more of a vintage look to it. And again, by like pulling up the compression, you get that texture in the background. So I'm all about that. And then just how you use the light. You know, this is taken. This wasn't that long ago, actually. This was like the last storm we had of 21, and I knew the snow was going to come in. I headed up to Harlem, and then I spent probably about the next 10 or 11 hours walking around at night, just looking for all these different shots. And this one kind of grabbed me. I realized from years ago I would be more inclined to shoot kind of like the iconic buildings of New York in the snow. And now I've kind of like evolved on. I'm looking for just things of interest. So I just thought this kind of funny, the hot dog stand illuminating light during a snowstorm. I'm not sure if I'd still eat a hot dog from there or not, but I'd probably still give it a miss.
Yeah, but I mean, also like these kinds of things are really kind of quintessential New York. So
Yeah.
you have those buildings that are iconic, but these are elements also that are a part of the the city's story. And then I know that when I'm in a place like New York, or London, or even Seattle, I'm trying to find those elements that add to, and then you have this series of images that tell the different parts of the city and that story and how it all comes together.
Yeah. No,
Let's
totally.
go ahead and, yeah. Oh,
Yeah, I don't, it's weird. I don't shoot that much color. When I'm shooting, everything's shot raw, unless I'm shooting with the monochrome camera, everything's kind of raw color. And then I'll go back and look at certain images and see what works better, color or black and white. This one, it worked well just because of that gorgeous blue, and shooting
yeah.
into the light. It's kind of like stage lights coming at you. And again, it's, you don't see like necessarily the steam pipe directly, but you can use it. I'm always trying to use elements like that to give that mystique or give, another layer to the picture. And it worked nicely on this one, I thought.
Absolutely. And then, yeah, there's just so many layers of texture and smoke and
Yeah, this was, there's about 4 or 5 steam pipes going down there. A lot of people, they look at this picture and they think that it's something that was shot on 9/11.
oh,
It's in that same area of town,
okay.
but it's, again, like you said, just going for things that are like very New York or very Americana, like the US postal truck, still waiting for that delivery. But yeah, it's, it's adding layers to an image. So when you start taking pictures of things like this, it's like, you might concentrate on one particular image, and as you're shooting, you start picking up on other elements and then slowly introducing them. And then, I think this was shot with a 21. It was pretty wide, but it worked. I think it worked pretty well on this. I think this was shot down in the Lower East Side. It was kind of very pictures that I wish I'd shot many years ago, like back in the 70s, 80s New York. I find myself trying to recreate similar images. So this is kind of a dated image to me because of the car.
Agreed.
And again, using that snow to kind of give that softer textured look.
And
Phil,
this one's
you
a
and
little
I
bit brighter.
discussed.
Go ahead, Rob, go ahead.
I'm sorry. Yeah, Phil, I remember discussing this image with the how you focused just sort of towards the rear of the car because you shot with what was it, the 35 Summilux 1.4.
Yeah, that's kind of my lens of choice. When I'm shooting, I tend to shoot everything wide open if I can. I'm always trying to get hold of the widest, the fastest lens I can get away with. And it's, again, having that depth of focus and being able to push elements out, and, you focus on things that you want to draw the eyes, the attention to. So it's just that's a beautiful lens to shoot with.
Yeah, there's a number of images that you've shot with that lens. I think that the hot dog stand, and there's this beautiful dimensionality that lens brings to those images. I mean, obviously, in the right hands, it really excels. I just I can go through these and pick out the ones with that lens, and it's a lens that's on my own personal wish list. That's why.
Yeah, I think that was one of the very first lenses I bought. And this is one of the questions I get asked all the time, is like, one lens that you could use for street photography, which is your lens? And for me, it's always the 35, because you can do portraits with it and you don't get too much distortion. With a 28, you kind of have to be selective about where you are. With a 35, you can get away with shooting portraits. It's good enough that you can get street scenes and you can get far back enough. And because it's a 1.4, you can also get that depth of focus as well. So That
You have
was
a
the
whole
first
other
lens.
body of work. Sorry, Phil.
Yeah, no, that was the first lens I bought back in 2004. Um, one of the mistakes I made in the past was I'd always buy, you know, you buy like the cheaper lens at the time because it's what you can get away with, and then slowly as your career develops, you want the faster, better lenses. And I've learned from my mistakes now. I just buy the one. I wait, save my money until I can get the one that I want. I just went and bought that 75 1.25 lens. It's been two years in the making, trying to save to get that. But that was you can create a look with a lens, you know.
Yeah. And I was going
That
to say you have a whole body of work that's dedicated to street portraiture, which is not covered exactly here, but those lenses, the 75 and the 35 1.4, phenomenal for street portraiture.
Yeah, no, totally.
So this is another favorite of mine, and it's a similar kind of story, because when I look at a photo like this, I'm thinking, this is really right place, right time, right timing. So I'd love for you to talk a little bit about kind of how you set this one up, or waited for the lucky thing to happen, if that was the
No,
case.
this is the flukiest shot I've ever got, I think. So again, it was like the weather was kind of really dark and foggy. So I went out, had my long lens on, and this is looking down at Times Square. So like that backlighting is coming from the lights in Times Square. And I positioned myself pretty low to the ground so I could get, the idea was I wanted shots of people crossing the road, and, I was trying to put them like dead center. And, I had a whole range of people with umbrellas. I actually had two people pushing a piano across the street. And when I'm shooting it, again, I'm shooting like a few frames a second just because I'm tracking them, because you kind of, different compositions work better than others. And, I've learned this, delete them later. And I got home and I'm going through my card, and all of a sudden I come across this and I'm like, wow, you couldn't have planned that any better. And
Right.
it's, we're talking about that layers that you were saying, Kate, and it's like perfectly framed in the window. You couldn't, I couldn't ask for any more than this, but it pays. Never delete the photographs off the back of your camera. Always
Oh,
wait until
definitely
you
not.
get home. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Let's take a quick question from Terry, who's tuning in on YouTube and Facebook. Do you go out with any kind of specific ideas or goals in mind, or is it kind of completely in the moment, or what your eyes drawn to for that day or that time?
I would say if, certain pictures, if the weather is really, really, really bad, then I know that I'm going out there with a certain goal. But generally my day to day, it's more about hitting a certain kind of area and working with the light that's there.
Okay.
So I'll shoot pretty much whatever I see. Like I have so many continuous projects that I'm have going on. It might be street signs. If I see a cool street sign, I'll shoot that. The ultimate goal for me is like, if I come home and I manage to speak with 2 or 3 people on the street and do 2 or 3 really cool street portraits, and those are like coming away with trophies for me, like for the day. And those are the ones that I'll edit immediately. And then the rest of them, I kind of like put them into my, it's like an ongoing mood board where I just put all my selects, and I'll leave them on there for a few days. But there's no like specific thing. It's more about, how my mind is during that day when I'm out shooting.
All right, cool. And can I ask how long you've lived in New York? Like, I feel like you know New York really well.
Yeah, at this
Manhattan
point,
really well.
yeah. I was riding on the street for 15 years, 12 hours a day, every single block. So I've been here it's going to be 21 years.
Wow.
So yeah, it's been a while, and I used to come here like 2 or 3 times a year before that, since
Yeah.
'94. Yeah, totally addicted. It's a very love-hate relationship, but New York,
I can see that.
yeah, New York's been very good to me though, so it's kind of,
That's great.
it's a good friend.
Yeah, I love it there.
Phil,
Go ahead, Rob.
Phil, about this image here, I was just thinking with your work with New York. I mean, this documenting during, you know, whether it had been 9/11 or this past pandemic, those are obviously momentous times. But also, I think you were telling me that this sky bridge here between these two buildings may not be there any longer. You're actually capturing the city as it's changing, even just during mundane times. That's
Yeah, it's always changing. I think I read the dumbest comment in the world once. It was on LFI, and it was someone who was commenting on New York, photographer who shot New York, and they were like, New York's been shot to death, you know, enough of New York. You know, and if we went by that logic, we would have no historical documentation of anything. So, you know, it could be that you photograph your corner bodega, you know, 50 years from now, someone's going to say, what's a bodega? You know,
Right.
or a phone box on the street, that's not going to exist probably in the next 10 years. And, you know, we look back at images of like when the Brooklyn Bridge was built and shots like that. So I realized that everything we're shooting, especially like these times right now with the pandemic, the images of the quiet streets of New York, but also even the stuff now, like, you know, you've got half people walking around with masks on, half people haven't got masks on. All of this is historical documentation.
Yeah,
It could
agreed.
be, it could be shooting the area that you live in. You know, I remember seeing an exhibition in the Met, and it was just a bunch of pictures from Soho, and it was Soho in the 70s, and the pictures weren't particularly interesting. It was just, oh wow, that's how it used to look.
Right.
So
Right.
it's worth, you know, shoot everything and anything. You don't have to edit it and stick it on Instagram, but you can file it away for a rainy day, you know?
Yeah, I here in Seattle, I go to Pike Place Market a lot. It's in the downtown area. It's one of the most, you know, frequented spots in the city for tourism and locals. And I love to go down there and take photos of it at night. I went down there a ton during the pandemic just to do that. You're capturing, like the photos we take today are history tomorrow, right? And how does it look? How has it changed? What are the different stories and vignettes that you can tell and put together of that? And, you know, it's totally valuable. Even like you said, even if you're filing it away, you know, you might come back to it in a year, you might come back to it in 2 years or 10 years. I have friends that collect old photos taken when the Space Needle was being built. And, you know, you don't think about the fact that someone was there and documented it, and now we're looking at it 50 or 80 years later, and it's really interesting to think about, you know?
Yeah. A lot of the prints that I sell are not necessarily pictures that I would think were like, you know, the greatest picture in the world, or it's more a case that that person has an emotional attachment because maybe they used to live on that block and they remember what it was like when they were there, and you happen to capture that. And, you know, that's a print that I've sold that I wouldn't have necessarily sold if it was that I was just going out trying to shoot pretty pictures all the time. So, you know, you never
There's
know
a little deeper meaning.
Yeah. You know, I don't, these images that I'm showing you now, it's like, it's not like I'm going out shooting these with a commercial objective in mind that I want to sell these. It's more like I'm just having fun with the camera and shooting. You know, I have lots of pictures of silhouettes. Like whenever I feel like I'm kind of losing my edge, or I'm not into photography at the moment. Like, you know, there were times last year when I was getting totally beaten down. So all I'll do is I'll go and find something like this and shoot it because it's fun to shoot. Or, you know, I'll go and find a a steam pipe and go there at 4 a.m. and shoot silhouettes walking in front of car lights, just because it's fun and it gets my brain thinking again, and I just get into the process of shooting.
Right.
So it doesn't have to be all about the picture. A lot of it's about the experience of getting the picture, and I found that a lot of the time, if I'm having fun with it, I'm getting my best work.
I definitely agree with that statement. I did a photo walk last night at Pike Place Market. We were there after hours. There weren't a lot of people around, but I took a ton of just fun and different photos because I am down there so much. So I also think about different techniques that I can try when I'm going to the same place again and again, or different times of year and different weather, like you've done with these.
Yeah, these are just fun to do, and you know, this was in a lot of these are in the same recent snowstorm, and you found it's like I don't like to spend too long in one particular place. It's almost like you're like a caffeine fueled junkie running from spot to spot because you know you've
Right.
only got so many hours to get it, and you know you want to make sure you want to get everything because you're getting greedy, and everything's good at that point. So, you know, this was pretty recent, and it's all about, you know, the tree for me. I would have liked it if it was a little bit more haze. It's still a little clear for me, if I can say, but yeah, I'm happy with it though. It's like, it was fun, and you know, this was out on 59th Street Bridge, looking out at Roosevelt Island, and this was shot again, I think, with the 35, and just waiting for tracks to go around. I wanted to capture it dead in the center, and then like that mist that you got in the background is kind of giving that nice fall off. So your eye is drawn more to the Roosevelt Island tram, and then it's like a very nice. It's got a nice grain look to it. Typically, when I'm shooting, I try not to raise the ISO too much. I always try to shoot at the lowest possible when I can. But I work with Capture One a lot, and there's some nice presets that they have that they make, and one of them is this really nice grainy look to it. I've just found some of their ones are some of the better ones that I've worked with, but almost looks like film.
Yeah, especially that last one definitely looks a little bit more like film.
I love this one. I've seen it on my screen. I don't know how it's coming through on Zoom, but I just want to dive into that grain. I'm a big film buff myself, and tend to shoot at 1600, shoot my Tri-X at 1600 for exactly this look. But Phil, you nail it way better than I do.
It's weird. Like when I was shooting film, I was addicted to grain the other way though. I was shooting everything like 25 ISO technical pan film. Yeah. And then I wanted it even finer. My dad had a medium format, so I was like, oh, can I use that? And then he bought a 5.4, and then I was trying to convince him to let me use that. I wasn't allowed that one. And at college, we only had one wide angle lens for like 90 students. So you had to it's the only time you'll ever see a college student get to college early. Get that lens.
Got to get the one lens.
Yeah. So, yeah, this was pretty recent as well. This was in the West Side Highway, and this is with the SL2 and the 35 again. And again, it's just like letting the weather do the work.
So let me ask real quick, for a lot of the work you're sharing, is most of this with the SL system, or are you using an M, a combination? Do you kind of have a go-to? We're getting some questions from folks.
Yeah, I have a weird setup. So I've got this, I used to. I have the SL2 setup. I used to have two SLs that I would go out with, and then I got, I blew out the money for the SL2, got that, and then I have an M10 monochrome. And I have this weird setup where I have like I have this long down jacket with two zippers, and then I'll have one camera on a long strap, one on a short strap, and it's like you're this weird guy that's opening the jacket up, you know. So I'll walk along, and all right, that's a shot for the SL2. Top zipper comes down, camera comes out, shoot, boom, covered up, and then I'll do the reverse with the monochrome. I just found, after years of doing this, I finally learned, like, keep the body close to your body so that your body heat keeps the camera warm,
Right.
and like keep your batteries close to your body as well. So otherwise you'll just drain batteries like nobody's business. Normally when I go out and shoot, I shoot till all the batteries are dead.
Okay.
That's when I know it's time to go home.
That's fair. And so I know I'm going off topic of the questions a little bit, but some of these are coming in from the internet. The series that you've been showing us so far, you love to get up early and you love to shoot in winter. Do you do this throughout the year, or do you just like, I guess one of the questions literally was, do you ever shoot in good weather?
That's what Netflix is for.
That's what Netflix is for. Perfect. I love it.
No, I shoot in good weather as well, but I do. I'm not as big a fan of the light, to be honest. In the summer, there's something about that winter light, especially like September, October in New York. The light is just unbelievable. What I'll do now is if I'm shooting with that bright sun, then I don't know, maybe I'm working on like silhouette stuff or things like that. I'm English. I burn easily. You know, I'm bald. I go red. So that's
the reason why I live in the Pacific Northwest. You know, I am fine with an overcast day. Give me mood, give me fog. I'm a happy girl. So this next shot, go ahead.
Yeah, the thing is, like, if you're doing commercial work and stuff like that, you have to shoot in whatever light you can. I can shoot in whatever light I can, but this is my escapism. You know, this is what I go to.
Right. So this shot, when we were looking through these and when I was looking at these, this one stops me a little bit because it is an unusual angle, and I kind of love playing around with this. Could you talk a little bit about your perspective here and what kind of drew you to this setup and angle?
It was so this was shot pretty early in the morning, and I just see this lone guy walking. You know, he's homeless and he's pulling his possessions along, and I'm just shooting away, and there was something about the feeling of it when I was shooting it. And it's, you know, when you just get an idea in your head, and it was like, you know, I hate to say it, but it's like, you know, life going down. That was kind of like the concept. Normally I would straighten a picture of something like this up, but I left it because there's a story in it with the person walking. If you caught that. But,
right.
You know, it's been sad to watch. The last year and a half has been really brutal to watch. A lot of my work.
We have that similar thing happening here. What I see though is there is this tilt, but like the Brooklyn Bridge is kind of more straightened out. So when I look through and I see the man walking and beyond it, that opening is framing the Brooklyn Bridge. And that is straight. But I just like playing around with these different angles. And it definitely, that angle kind of does tie into the mood for me for sure. So I just like to ask about it.
It's always good to shoot and play around with angles anyway, especially if like you're doing abstract work or architecture. You know, when you're shooting, you kind of shoot one like this, and then you might change the angle very slightly and just like try rotating the camera a few different perspectives, because you're just playing with composition and playing with lines, really.
Right.
It's always good to experiment like that. And
this one's in color too, and you said you don't normally do that. So why Why did you keep this one in color?
It was just that beautiful blue. You know, I went out at that time in the morning, and you kind of like that blue hour before the light really comes up, and it just worked for that particular image. I've shot this like similar scene a lot. It's a kind of a happy place for me to go and shoot down there. So this is a scene that I've shot, you know, 1,000 times, and 999 times it's black and white. But for this particular one, it worked better in color.
Okay. So I know we have about 10 minutes left. We have a handful of images to look at, a couple more questions. Those of you who are tuning in, if you have more questions, keep those coming in.
Yeah, this is pretty recent work. You know, it's just playing with contrast and playing with texture. Just it's a lot of fun to shoot in, and you know, like you said, I'm shooting a lot more work now where it's just I'm more focused in on texture and like different sides of New York and how you can use the light and how the weather plays into it.
Right. Well, so let's ask a couple of technical questions as we're looking at these last few frames. You talked a little bit about kind of embracing the grain a little bit for the shot of the gondola going over. So you're not afraid to push your ISO a little bit. Do you feel like there's any limitations there, or you don't worry about it and go for it and embrace it?
Well, if it's gonna, like, I prefer not to push the ISO if I can get away with it, because it's easier to add, you know, a digital grain than it is to work with the grain that's on the camera and try to reduce noise to make it lower. So, you know, if it's grainy, then I would just rather go with the grain and just go all in.
Right.
And make it really, really grainy, rather than trying to lessen the noise and, you know, go the other way. So sometimes it's better. You can get a really nice look from it. So again, it's like having those nice fast lenses, though. It's always good to have. So yeah,
Absolutely.
it's just
absolutely.
Yeah, I'd go
go ahead.
6400. I'll probably go to 6400 would be the very highest I'd go to.
Okay. And you talked about this a little bit at the beginning. What would you say but I'm going to ask it again in a slightly different way. What would you say your percentage of time is spent on personal work versus the commercial work? I know you're doing some shows with this kind of work. You have a book as well.
Yeah. Sorry.
No, I was just trying to figure out another way to ask it. But yeah, I mean, is it
60-40,
balanced? Pardon me, 60-40? Okay.
60-40, 40% commercial and work, and then 60% my work. But what's ended up happening is my work has now ended up being work. So, you know, I have a show at Leica in Mayfair in London at the moment. Obviously, the book that came out and selling prints. So it's kind of weird how it's you know, perfect storm where what was my passion has now ended up being in a business side of things now, where people are buying the prints of my personal work. So it's developed nicely.
That's good though.
Yeah, you know, that's the transition you want. If I could turn around and say no to the corporate work, then I would love to be able to do that and just focus, you know, purely on this. Like, to be honest with you, if I really wanted to, I could have stayed in the celebrity game. If it was about money, I could have stayed in that and made a lot of money. There was a ton of money to be made back then. And, you know, thing is, money's not everything, right? So, you know, you don't want to be one of those people that just bottles money away and then, you know, it's all gone tomorrow. So I'd rather make less money and enjoy my life. That's pretty much what it comes down to, and go out with a purpose. Yeah, this was.
Go ahead.
Love this image.
Yeah, this was kind of like, again, like using the long lens. So you notice a lot of my work is kind of much longer lens stuff, And that comes from being a press photographer. That was kind of like the way we're all trained is you'd always have 2 or 3 bodies, and 70 to 200 or 300 to 8 would be your second body usually. So that was the way I learned doing street and doing news. So it's weird how different jobs that you do and different things, you can pull little pieces from each job that you do and like implement it into your own work. So that's kind of one thing that I took away, was longer lenses and getting the compression.
So let me ask a post-production question real quick. I know we're going to have a couple slides and we'll talk about those. Post-production wise, you talked about using Capture One. Do you tend to spend a fair bit of time in editing, or is your goal to get as much of your shot in camera, from framing, cropping, tones? How much do you do in camera? How much do you do in post-production? Most
of it's in camera.
Okay.
You know, I'll do some cropping in you know, when I'm editing. It's no different from when you used to use an easel in the darkroom. You know, there are little things on the sides to crop. You know, a shot like this, you're more worried about getting hit by a car from behind.
Get the shot and run.
Absolutely perfect. So I don't like to spend too much time in the edit, to be honest. 5 to 15 minutes max. It's more about putting the time in and going out in the worst weather to get the look in the first place. Like you can't get that from an edit.
Right.
You know, and to be honest with you, like even like the commercial work, I don't edit that. I have a guy that I work with who is a wizard, and they can take 10 images and put it all together. I don't have that skill set, and I don't want to put the time in to learn that either.
Right.
So the less is more.
Agreed there. Before we get to those last couple of slides, for people who are interested in kind of exploring street photography, maybe in their own neighborhoods or cities, what like one tip would you leave them with to encourage them or get them started?
Shoot everything and anything, and go and revisit shots different times of the day as well, and just see the different times of the day and different weather, and see how each thing can look different.
Okay.
That's what I would say. Go revisit stuff. You'll learn a lot just from doing that. And don't be afraid to experiment, because the more you experiment, the more mistakes that you make, the better you're going to get. The more it's all about consistency. Like how consistent can you be out there? Like, you know, the thing is, like, the difference between a professional photographer and say an amateur, like an amateur can shoot a really good image, right? Sometimes better than a professional, but a professional can go out there day in, day out and shoot great images every day. So and that's from learning, making mistakes. So don't be afraid to make mistakes, and don't get beat up about it as well. Just have fun with it.
Absolutely. All right, well, let's go to these last couple of slides. And Phil, can you just talk about your book a little bit?
Yeah, book was released in 2019. It's it's available in bookstores, but it's on Amazon, and it's around the world. So it did, you know, it's in MoMA, Fotografiska. If you happen to be in New York City and you're nearby, go support your local bookstore.
Absolutely. Here for that. And then the next slide has just a little reminder to get connected with Phil on social media and check out his website. I have shared his Instagram handle in the chat a couple of times. I would encourage you to go follow him. His work is really, really beautiful, as you've seen in this session today. And it's very inspiring for me. Yesterday and today, we've had a couple of awesome street photographers on, and it is a genre that I personally love to do, especially when I travel. And so I just want to take a moment to thank Rob for running the slides, and Phil, obviously, for the stories, the images, and your time today. It's really meant a lot. We really appreciate it.
Thanks so much for having me on.
Of course.
Thank you.
Thank you, Rob. Thank you to Leica also for helping to facilitate. Like I said, we do have a Leica boutique here at the Glazer store in South Lake Union. Definitely a one-stop shop for anything you might need, including a nice selection of used gear. And with all that said, I want to thank Phil and Rob again so much. This is our last session for Photofest. Many of these sessions will be up on our YouTube channel, so you can go to the Photofest 2021 playlist, check out anything you might have missed. Some, unfortunately, are going to have to come off of that playlist tomorrow, but most of it will be up for at least a few months. Check it out. Let us know if you have any questions. So to everyone who tuned in today, thanks for spending some time with us this afternoon. One last reminder, the sale for Photofest ends today. So come in if you're in the Seattle area, or go to our website and check out the deals. They all end today. All right. Thank you so much. We're getting a lot of gratitude from the people who are tuning in. So everybody really enjoyed this. So thank you guys again so much. We're so grateful. All right. So we'll sign off for now. Everybody have a great rest of your weekend, and we'll see you online soon.